Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tanique McCullough. I'm the Director of Transportation for the City of Winston-Salem and the Winston-Salem Urban Area Technical Coordinating Committee meeting chair. I'd like to call to order the Winston-Salem Urban Area Technical Coordinating meeting. Due to the Safer at Home order issued by Governor Cooper, members of the Winston-Salem Urban Area Technical Coordinating Committee are participating virtually. All members will vote by roll call. A member will be recognized, and at that time, the member will state his or her vote. At this time, I will ask our recording secretary, Kirk Erickson, to do the roll call.
Kelly Bennett.
Here.
Tanique.
Here.
Daryl Breland. Daryl, I see you on the call.
I'm sorry, struggling with the mute here.
Thank you. Pat Ivy. Pat, are you still on the call?
Hey, Kurt.
Yes.
This is Philip Craven. Fred Faith is trying to get on, and
Okay.
I'm not sure about Pat.
Okay, I see he's on here and he's muted, so we'll call it good.
Thanks.
All right. Kelly Garvin.
Here.
Let's see. Lee Rollins.
Here.
Chris Jensen.
I'm here.
Megan Garner.
Here.
Scott Snow.
Here.
Mark Kirshner.
Here.
Did I miss anyone else who's a voting member? All right, thank you.
Kurt,
Yes.
Pat Ivy has no audio.
Okay. Does Fred have audio yet?
He said he was on. Let me ask him.
Pat could try to call in on the 1408 number listed, if that helps.
This is Fred. I'm using the telephone, so I can hear you guys.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Kirk, did we have anyone for the public comment?
We did not.
Okay. All right, then we will move into our action items. I'm sorry, give me a second. Our first action item is a consideration of the July 16th, 2020 TAC meeting minutes. You all should have received it in your packet, and I would ask if anyone would like to make a motion. If you could please say your name and make that motion, please.
Scott Snow, motion for approval.
Lee Rollins, second.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Lee. Kirk, if we could go ahead and do the roll call for the vote, please.
Kelly Bennett.
Aye.
Tanique.
Yes.
Daryl.
Yes.
Either Fred or Pat. Fred, are you still with us on the phone?
Hold on, Kirk. Let me go see real quick.
Okay.
You can go to the next person while we wait.
Kelly Garvin.
Yes.
Secretary votes yes. Kevin Edwards. I'm sorry, I was reading the wrong line. Lee Rollins voted as the
Yes.
second. Chris Jensen.
Yes.
Megan Garner.
Yes.
Scott Snow voted yes. And Mark Kirsner.
Yes.
And do we have Pat or Fred yet?
It's Fred. I was having a brief conversation with Pat. He still doesn't have audio.
And is your vote affirmative?
Excuse me?
Is your vote affirmative on the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion is unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. We'll get through these. The second action item is the consideration of the Comprehensive Transportation Plan and the 2045 MTP for the Winston-Salem Urban Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. This will be Byron and staff from VHB. And I will also add that at our TAC meeting, there will be a public hearing on this item. Byron?
Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
As you all know, we've been working over the past several months on updating our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, our MTP, and our Comprehensive Transportation Plan. These plans outline the direction and desires we have for our transportation network up until 2045. The MTP is a federal document and is physically constrained, while the CTP is the state required document. VHB has been leading the efforts to update this plan that we have here before you that will go to the TAC for adoption. Luba from VHB staff will review the documents, the process, the projects, as well as the components that are part of this plan update. So I will be making Luba the presenter.
Thank you, Byron. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here with you today, presenting an update on the MTP draft plan that we're hoping the TCC committee will consider for adoption or for recommendation to the TAC for adoption today. And Byron, would you please let me know when I can go ahead and share my screen?
Good to go.
Okay. Let's see. Share.
Can I ask that if you're not speaking at this time, that you mute your phone or audio, please? Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Hopefully everybody can see the screen now. Byron, can you please confirm?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. So I have a few slides to review with you all today on the current status of the MTP and some of the components, as Byron has mentioned. So the main purpose is to provide an update on some of the feedback we received during rounds 2 and 3 of the public and stakeholder input, provide a summary of the recommendations in the MTP, and then to also talk a little bit about the next steps. So Byron has mentioned the CTP plan update. That's going to be the next phase of the planning study that we'll be moving into over the next 2 months after the MTP report is completed. So we started out with the vision, goals, and objectives development with the support from the steering committee for this study. We also reviewed the existing plans and conditions, and the existing conditions report was released back in May. We did a number of model runs for various scenarios, starting out with the existing and committed project scenario with the 2045 population employment data projections. And we had 3 rounds of public input meetings. As you all are probably aware, the first round was back in May. We had 5 webinars. For the second and third round, we used a virtual public input meeting format, which also involved this virtual meeting room or lobby, as you can see on the screen. This was set up with the help from our VHB visual designers. So we were able to post the handouts in this format through this virtual meeting room or virtual lobby. And then we also still held the webinar meetings for different topics. So during round 2, which was in late July, we had 4 simultaneous breakout sessions on the July 23rd. And then in this last round, we had 5 different webinars focused on roadway, public transportation, bicycle and pedestrian improvements between August 25th and September 3rd. And then the draft MTP plan was posted for 30-day public comment period. So that was between August 17th and September 16th. We also had a number of survey responses. So overall participation as far as people who joined our virtual meeting room, there were over 550 attendees who came to click on the virtual meeting room and interact with it in some way. But we had many fewer respondents to our surveys. In this last round, we had 130 attendees to the virtual meeting room and about 24 surveys completed. This last round of surveys, people were generally positively receiving our roadway, transit, bicycle, and pedestrian recommendation. And then we also got some feedback regarding some of the potential electric vehicle charging station locations as well through the survey. This is a chart illustrating the number of attendees or people who clicked on the virtual meeting room in this last round. So you can see we got up to 130, but there were definitely a couple peaks. So August 25th was our first webinar, and you can see that there was a bit of a spike in attendance around that time, and then there was another little spike towards the end of the public involvement period. So generally, from the study team perspective, we feel pleased with this setup. We think that it helped present the information in a more visually appealing way. And then the handouts remain posted on the website now, even though the virtual meeting room itself has been taken down. As a reminder, we have provided a fiscal constraint. Fiscal model was built to determine what is the likely funding amount by type that's going to be available in the region between now and 2045. So this was taken into consideration. Generally, we're projecting the trends as usual, taking into consideration that the STI prioritization is still the format through which the bulk of state funding for transportation is distributed in North Carolina. The travel demand model, which is built by PART, was one of the key tools we were able to utilize for this MTP plan update. So when we were looking at the existing and existing plus committed project scenario with the 2045 population employment data, there were a number of areas where congestion seemed like a concern. And you can see those areas highlighted in red and orange on the screen. So one of the larger corridors on here is probably I40. And so that ended up being one of the recommendations from the MTP is I40 widening along a significant portion of that corridor. So a lot of those congestion issues you can see around Kernersville, Clements, Bermuda Run, some of the key US routes, such as 158 and 421. We also looked at the safety data and a number of other parameters that were the score for the roadway projects was based on the vision goals and objectives for the plan. The preferred fiscally constrained scenario, which you see the project map on the screen, it has changed a little bit since the earlier draft. There were 120 projects, the roadway projects recommended. They were kind of divided between modernization, widening, new location, and some interchange improvement projects. So again, I40 widening is one of those projects that were recommended. Actually, it's covered up on the map here under an ITS project. So those projects are staggered by different years, horizon years, 2035 and 2045. Also, the map includes projects that are already in the STIP and committed for funding. So some of the projects, for example, I40 in Bermuda Run, that bridge across Yadkin River, that's already in the STIP, and I think the construction is probably nearing completion, but it's because it's a project in the STIP, the MTP still reflects those projects that are in the STIP. And of course, the Northern Beltway that was already committed in the STIP, you see those projects reflected as well. So we felt like this recommended list of roadway projects does a pretty good job of distributing the improvements throughout the MPO region and not being focused in any one area. Bermuda Run, for example, so some of the improvements that were recommended. And the online interactive map is still updated and available. So I think that's one of the better ways to interact with the recommended list of projects. You can navigate to it at this link shown below, bit.ly/WS2045 MTP. You have to capitalize WS and MTP. So when we looked at this updated preferred scenario in the travel demand model, we are still seeing some spot congestion issues, but we do think that a number of those issues, a number of the larger issues have been addressed and resolved, and some of the other smaller issues you might still be seeing on this map. We might have some of the modernization projects in place recommended for that area, but they're not necessarily showing up. In some ways, the travel demand model is great at seeing the larger trends and pictures, but it's not always good at picking up the impacts of a small intersection improvement. So things that are likely to have positive net benefits for congestion reduction, for example, if it's an intersection or a smaller modernization project, the model might not always see it. We did see with the addition of I40 widening, a significant reduction in vehicular hours traveled, about 4.86% versus existing and committed scenario, about 19,000 hours that will be reduced in travel to the traveling public. We think that's a significant reduction in the travel time. It will improve the quality of life and economic competitiveness for the local area businesses as well. Also, the safety is expected to be improved with a combination of modernization, intersection, and interchange improvements. And again, we felt like this project recommendations list spread out the improvements throughout the region pretty well. With inclusion of a high percentage of modernization projects, we think that that lowers the per project cost, which enables the region to fund a higher number of projects. The next slide shows a few of the trade-offs in terms of what we're seeing with the travel demand model when we add the I40 widening project to the list. So you can see on this map, it shows the net increase versus decrease in travel times. So when we added I40 widening, the areas in red, that's where we see an increase in volumes during PM peak, and the blue areas is where we see a decrease. So what really happened with this project is that, of course, with I40 widening, we did see that more people would choose this more direct route across the region. And some of the local areas would see a decrease in traffic. So corridors like Silas Creek Parkway, Waughtown and Sprague Street, Kernersville and High Point roads, Clemensville Road, some of those corridors that are more local in nature or maybe regional, but they're not interstate type facilities that would see a reduction in travel. Also, the Northern Beltway would see a slight reduction in travel as well, as some people will choose to take the more direct route on I40. Congestion, again, will be reduced as a result. And we think that this is a good way to continue to preserve the value of existing infrastructure. The corridors where we are seeing additional increases in travel as a result of I40 widening, we feel like those corridors have significant additional available capacity. So for example, I-74 and a segment of the southwest portion of the Northern Beltway. This map just illustrates the projects by horizon year. So the orange ones are the STIP projects, primarily those committed through 2025. Corridors in green are 2035 projects, and corridors in blue are 2045 projects. A lot of the widening projects, with the exception of I40, have been pushed out to 2045 to enable more time for consideration. So for example, if some of the smaller modernization type projects provide significant improvements, the region has more time to evaluate whether or not some of those capacity widening projects are actually as necessary. On the transit side, we have identified several key recommendations that we think are the top priority to implement as part of this MTP draft plan. So we showed increase in frequency on routes 96 and 92 for Vista, and then increase in frequency in the middle of the day on Part Route 1 as key priorities. We also indicate that an upgrade to Vista administration maintenance facility is needed. So that's included in the list for about a $20 million cost. However, something that's not on here is that you'll see in the fiscal constraint table is that we have identified that there is additional capacity to fund more transit improvements through a combination of CMAQ and STBGDA funding. So one of the things that has happened recently in this region is that some of the CMAQ grants have expired, and so some of the frequencies on existing service routes have been cut back. So I think it's also important for the region to continue considering how to bring back this frequency that has been lost recently. So again, I think that this potential to increase frequency on the corridors, on the service corridors that are already being serviced, but maybe updating those headways would be a key priority. But as far as specific projects where transit funding was assigned to those specific projects, this is where we are in terms of those 3 key routes and the maintenance and administration facility that we think are key priorities to focus. And then as the region updates the local and regional transit plans, and as some of those CMAQ and STBGDA calls for projects come up, there'll be additional opportunities to consider new funding for increased or expanded service. Some of the planning and additional priorities for transit that were considered. We think that it's important for the region to keep talking about the need for additional local funding sources for transit, because even if you are able to bring down some of those federal grants, such as CMAQ or STBGDA, there is always a local match required, especially for transit operating expenses. That's a big need. And so this consideration around a local sales tax for transit might be an important piece of those future conversations to expand the transit service in the region. Expanding TDM services such as carpooling, van pooling, walking, and bicycling trips could also support a robust and strong transit service network. Some consideration around fare collection, additional planning around the Winston-Salem streetcar can be continued. And then access to existing transit stops through improved sidewalks and closing the ADA gaps would be also helpful. Looking at bicycle and pedestrian project recommendations, again, we had to take into account the fiscal constraint and what funding is likely to be available through STBGDA and STI prioritization. We have identified a number of key improvements that are a little bit more centered towards the urban core of the region. About $118 million worth of new bicycle and pedestrian projects have been identified in this draft MTP for horizon years 2035 and 2045. Generally, the public comments that we have received from survey responders are asking for even more investment in bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. And so it seems like this region has a very strong interest. There's a number of local plans that are adopted for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. So this trend will likely continue. Of course, there's a number of other recommendations identified. Some of them overlap with roadway projects, and we think that they'll actually be, it will be possible to implement them as part of roadway projects under the NCDOT Complete Streets policy. And we'll also be including a much higher number of bicycle and pedestrian improvement recommendations in the CTP maps as well for future consideration. So again, a reminder, the online interactive map is available, and you can search projects by ID in the little search and query tool. And then talking about our next steps. So today, again, we are hoping that the TCC and TAC will consider an adoption of this document so that it can meet the federal deadline that I believe is coming up at the end of September. And then the study team will continue working on the CTP maps and also an update to the congestion management process. We are hoping to bring those draft CTP maps to the public and the committees for review in mid-October for mid-November adoption. I believe that next meeting is coming up in the middle of November for the TCC and TAC. So with that, I was going to open it up for questions, or I can show the online interactive map if there's an interest in that. I could show the study website. There is an updated plan that's now posted. If you go to the study website, wsmtpupdate.com, you can see the version of the report as of September 17th.
Okay. Thank you, Luba. Byron, did you have any additional comments?
No additional comments.
Were there any questions for Luba or comments to be made at this time?
Hey, Tanique, it's Mark Kirshner with PART. I just want to thank and praise the MPO for a fantastic plan, and I really appreciate the involvement of PART as well as looking at the regional picture. And I just really think the whole process went really well, and your outreach and engagement during this period. I know a lot of it was VHB, but it's all part of the big team, and just really think it was a well-done process.
Thank you, Mark, for that. I agree that during this time it's difficult to get public engagement. Most times when we aren't working through COVID, it's hard to get the public engaged. And so to see the number of people that actually participated during COVID is very impressive. So thank you, staff, for the work that you all did in VHB on that. Other comments?
Nate, this is Pat. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Just a quick question. I noticed on one of the slides that talked about the horizon years on the different projects. I noticed that on the Beltway, the Eastern Beltway projects, it did show the B and C sections as being completed within the 2025 horizon year. But the sections which are D, E, and F, and then 2247 EB, which is the 52 interchange, it indicated that that would be completed in 2026 through 35. Obviously, those projects are going to be completed before 2025, and just want to make sure if that was going to create any issues in terms of air quality or the plan itself.
We can double check on that. I think that one of the reasons why we reflect is that way is because this tip shows the funding, possibly the payback for the funding extending over a longer period of time. So that's probably why it shows up that way, is based on the fiscal constraints, so the funding portion, not necessarily on the actual completion date of construction. But we'll double check on that. Thank you.
No problem. Just want to make sure.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Pat, and we're glad we can finally hear you.
I think it was my issue, not y'all.
Any other comment? I did see that Loretta Barron with FHWA is here. I didn't know if you had any thoughts or comments at this time, and sorry that we overlooked you earlier. Nope, okay.
Hi, Tanique. This is Loretta.
Hi,
I'm
Loretta.
sorry. Trying to operate the mute button again. I think Federal Highway already submitted comments on the process. And so we're just hoping that those comments will be addressed before adoption. But outside of that, I don't think I have anything else. Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, well, thank you and welcome.
Yeah.
Well, if there are no additional comments, this is an action item for consideration of adoption. Would anyone like to make a motion? And if so, please recognize yourself by name, and we will move from there. Thank you. Nobody?
Move approval, Pat Ivy.
Thank you, Pat.
Second.
Thank you, Scott. Kirk, we'll ask you to do the roll call for a vote, please.
All right, Kelly Bennett,
Aye.
Tanique,
Aye.
Daryl,
Aye.
Pat Ivy votes yes. Kelly Garvin, Kelly, was that a yes? I'm sorry.
Yes. Was it
Thank
Kelly
you.
Garvin? I couldn't hear you. You were kind of coming in and out.
Secretary votes yes. Lee Rollins,
Yes.
Chris Jensen,
Yes.
Megan Garner,
Yes.
Scott Snow votes yes, and Mark.
Yes.
Thank you.
Kirk, I see that we also have Donna Woodson that's joined us.
Thank you, Tanique. Donna, what is your vote on this item?
And
Yes, and I apologize for being late.
Thank
I
you.
think. And did you see Richard? Did Richard vote?
Richard whom?
Oh, never mind. I don't see him anymore. Never mind. Okay. So it's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We will go to our next item. Item number 4 is the consideration of the 2020 Service Transportation Block Grant Direct Attributable and Transportation Alternatives Direct Attributable Recommended Projects, amending the 2020-2029 Winston-Salem Urban Area Metropolitan Planning Improvement Program. And I'm going from memory. Was that Matthew?
You're right, Tanique. Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. So this is, like Tanique said, an action item to approve STP-GDA funding for our transportation projects. And this was an information item back in July. So I'll just kind of do a recap of what we discussed then. Just as a reminder, the Winston-Salem Urban Area MPO is a TMA, and as such, we can program these STP-GDA funds. And back in November, we announced that we had approximately $13 million to program during this round. And following that up in January, we shared the projects that were submitted. So we had 16 sidewalk projects, 4 greenway projects, 5 intersection and small roadway projects, and 2 transit projects that were considered. And at that same time, we also shared the criteria and the process that we would go through in evaluating the projects to come up with our recommendations. And that process was approved at that time. We set up our selection committee at that point, which included MPO staff, NCDOT Division 9 staff, City of Winston-Salem engineering staff, staff from the town of Louisville, and even some staff from the Winston-Salem Forsyth County School District to give us a different perspective. You'll see attached to this item are the tables of projects and the recommendations for projects to move forward with funding. And as Tanique mentioned, there's also an amendment as part of this item to the MTIP to account for these projects. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about the projects or the process.
At this time, are there any questions for Matthew, or is there anyone that would like to make a motion? This is an action item.
This is Chris. I recommend approval.
Thank you, Chris.
Mark Kirshner at part, second.
Thank you, Mark. So it's been moved and seconded. We will ask Kirk to do the roll call for the vote, please.
Kelly Bennett,
Aye.
Tanique,
Yes.
Daryl,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Kelly Garvin,
Yes.
Secretary votes yes, Lee Rollins,
Yes.
Chris Jensen votes yes, Megan Garner,
Yes.
Scott Snow,
Yes.
Mark Kirshner votes yes, and Donna Woodson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to item number 5, which is the consideration of the fiscal year 2020 through 2029 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program amendments and modifications for the Winston-Salem Urban Area MPO. And that's Byron.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Before you, you have a list of amendments to projects that are included in our Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, or MTIP. This document is a listing of all the projects programmed into the state's Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP. These documents, as required by the state, do have to match, and so any amendments that are made by the state are passed down to the MPO to adopt into the MTIP. As required by our public participation plan, these amendments, modifications, and deletions were made available for 30 days for the public to review from June 19th to July 21st. No comments were received during that time. Modifications of note that are included in that packet are US 158 right-of-way has been delayed until fiscal year 21. And a portion of the western Northern Beltway right-of-way has been delayed till fiscal year 22, and a portion of the eastern leg of the Northern Beltway construction has been delayed to fiscal year 21. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, John. We can't see you, but are there any questions for Byron? Okay, this is an action item. Would anyone like to make a motion, please?
Pat Ivy.
Thank you, Pat.
Scott Snow, second.
Thank you, Scott. So it's been moved and seconded. Kirk, we'd ask that you please do the roll call for a vote.
Kelly Bennett,
Aye.
Tanique,
Yes.
Daryl,
Yes.
Pat voted yes. Kelly Garvin,
Yes.
Secretary votes yes. Lee Rollins,
Yes.
Chris Jensen,
Yes.
Megan Garner,
Yes.
Scott Snow votes yes. Mark Kirsner,
Yes.
and Donna Woodson.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our last action item for today is the consideration of the renewal of the Winston-Salem Urban Area Metropolitan Planning Organization Transportation Conformity Memorandum of Agreement. And that is Kelly that will handle this item.
Yes, ma'am. The item before you is the consideration of the renewal of the MPO's Transportation Conformity Memorandum of Agreement. The NCDOT of North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, is requesting the adoption and signature of the revised MOA between the MPO, NCDOT, DEQ, Forsyth County, EAP, FHWA, and FTA. In accordance with the Clean Air Act, the DEQ chose to develop transformation conformity MOAs to ensure the interagency consultation procedures for transportation conformity are followed in each of the state's maintenance area pursuant to the federal regulations. The MOA outlines the responsibilities and processes that each signatory entity will follow to ensure that transportation plans conforms with emissions budget set forth in NC SIP, which is the State Implementation Plan. That plan is a collection of regulation and documents used by a state, territory, or local air district to reduce air pollution in areas that do not meet national ambient air quality standards. As of now, no action is needed besides adopting the revised MOA, since all the areas in the states are in conformity. The existing MOA were approved by the EPA into the SIP in February of 2014. DEQ has been coordinating the process of renewing the MOA with each of their 11 MPOs, the National Park Services, and NCDOT to fulfill their duties according to the existing MOA. Most of the revisions include updates of names and plans and agencies, as well as updates to methodologies concurrent with current practices. The next steps include the signatures from a variety of agencies. Included in this document is the red line version of the updated MOA. This document was presented at our last meeting for review and is now up for action. I will answer any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you, Kelly. Are there any questions for Kelly? Or would anyone like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the MPO's Transportation Conformity Memorandum of Agreement. Provided I get a second.
Thank you, Donna. Is there a second?
Rollins, second.
Thank you, Lee. It has been moved and seconded. Kirk, can you do the vote, please?
Kelly Bennett.
Aye.
Tanique.
Yes.
Daryl.
Yes.
Pat Ivy.
Yes.
Kelly Garvin.
Yes.
Secretary votes yes. Lee voted yes. Chris Jensen.
Yes.
Megan.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
And Donna votes yes. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right. The next few items are information items for future action. So number 7 is the review of the Winston-Salem Transit Authority's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan. And I guess I will be the one covering that. The Public Transportation Area Safety Plan must include safety performance targets, and it is a requirement according to the Public Transportation Area Safety Plan rule, which became effective on July 19th, 2019. The plan that's included is for the Winston-Salem Transit Authority, and it was written to comply with FTA's requirements and to support WISTA's objective of providing safe, reliable, comfortable, and innovative transportation options to everyone or every member of their staff and the community. The plan is included for information and review. WISTA plans to, or the MPO will bring this plan back for the TAC's consideration, TAC and TCC consideration of approval in November so that they can meet the FTA's requirement of adoption by December 2020. If you read the item, you'll see the second page, there's some information there that's in error, so you can ignore that. But if you have any questions in particular about the safety plan itself, Donna is here available, and the plan is also attached that you can provide comments either to us or to Donna if we need to make any changes before adoption at the next meeting in November. Any questions? All right. Hearing none, then we will go on to our next item, which is item number 8. The review of the Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities Grant Program and Section 5307 Job Access Reverse Commute, and plans to amend the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program for fiscal year 2020. This item is information because we currently have a call for projects which started August 24th and is scheduled to end on September 24th. These funds are made available, the 5307 JARC funds are made available through 5307 funds, and the TAC allocating funds for JARC type programs to go to subrecipients to provide transportation services to individuals needing, low-income individuals needing transportation to work, primarily during the hours when our primary providers, WISTA, Davidson County Transportation and PART, are unable to provide services for them. And that's in the amount of $55,000. And then the 5310 funds, Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals. Again, it's for services in the MPO outside of the service hours that our primary providers can provide services. But that is for individuals, seniors and individuals with disabilities. And the amount available there is $365,651. I've included this item in the agenda so that at the next meeting, we will have a list of providers that we are recommending funding distribution for, so that there can be action taken, so that we can move forward in our schedule and being able to get the application into the system for FTA. In this, you'll see the schedule for the actual call itself, and then on the second page of the action request form, there's a link if you know of any transportation agencies that you think might be interested in applying for these grants. There's still 7 days left in the call that they can participate. I will entertain any questions if anyone has it. Okay. Hearing none, we will move on to item number 9. Review of the Winston-Salem Urban Area Metropolitan Planning Organization's Federal Functional Classification Update Process and 2020 Call for Modifications. And that is Byron.
Okay. Going to be working primarily from the slides for this presentation. All right. So last time we talked in 2017 about the federal functional classifications, provided you a brief overview of the purpose of federal functional classification, how we are to modify our network, as well as the approval process and application that we put together for reviewing these modification requests. I'm just going to briefly go through presentation again, just to provide you one with a reminder of what our process is, what we look at when we do our evaluations, as well as describe where we are with NCDOT in this review process that will eventually be submitted to FHWA, as well as the next call for projects or call for modifications that we'll be doing following the adoption of the CTP and the MTP. So the primary functions of the federal functional classification is to, one, create a transportation hierarchy, which is a grouping of highways, roads, and streets that provide similar services and are located in similar areas. We also use this for transportation planning so that we can logically and efficiently create transportation networks which service the whole community. We also use this for federal funding, deciding design guidelines, as well as data collection and analysis. There are several factors that we include in the evaluation of streets when it comes to transportation, federal for classification. Some of those factors that we might include are a number of lanes, the amount of right-of-way, the location, the speed, the amount of mobility versus accessibility that these roadways provide. All these, as well as whether a location is located in an urban area or rural area. Using these factors, we divide our transportation network up into different categories, 8 to be exact. Roadways can fall under interstates, expressways, and freeways, other principal arterials or minor arterials, major and minor collectors, as well as local roads. Each is we clearly defined in our process as far as what these roads should look like, the type of access, mobility that they should provide, as well as different factors on speed, road design, and right-of-way are all included in our process. So there are several reasons that when we're going through the federal functional class modification process that we would actually want to change a road. Sometimes we're adding new construction or extending existing highways. Sometimes we're upgrading facilities. This again can be due to the change in traffic patterns, land uses, type of service that that road provides. And sometimes based on those same factors, we might downgrade a road because it may not be used or have the same function as it had when it was originally built. Of course, when we have reasons to change, we also have reasons not to change. So reasons that we don't change is strictly for federal funding purposes. We should not be in the roadways classification just so that it can be considered for funding. Also, to improve its priority or receiving improvements or think within the STIP, relaxing design standards or access management standards for roads, as well as making it eligible for traffic calming. These should not be primary reasons for changing a road's classification. Now, as I mentioned, back in 2017, we did adopt a process as well as an application for reviewing roadway requests for modifications within our FFC. Included on that application, you'll find information such as the purpose for the modification. We asked for details on the segment description, as well as what are some of the surrounding land uses and whether that road is considered something that is providing accessibility or mobility. We also asked for information about roadway characteristics, such as the number of lanes, lane width, speed limit, ADT counts, whether that is a STIP project or was a STIP project in the past, as well as information about multimodal facilities that that highway or that roadway project might be part of. Here is a copy of our matrix, which again outlines all the different features, aspects that we look at when we are going through our review process for looking at roadways that are being requested or changed in our federal functional class network. As you know, we've also, as part of this review process, it is first reviewed by our staff who will work with the local community on making any types of modifications or changes to the application. Once the staff and the local community has properly went through their review, we'll then sit down with the Streets and Highways Subcommittee, review the roadway modification request, and then we'll submit them to the TCC and the TAC for final approval before submitting to NCDOT and then FHWA for final approval. In front of you right now is a list that we are now submitting to NCDOT. We've had discussions with them on the roadways projects that we initially evaluated, as well as talk to them about the recommendations that they are recommending that we submit for these roadways and then submit to FHWA. Originally, there were, 15 recommendations we added to. The addition of those two facilities will require that both the TCC and the TAC take action before NCDOT can submit them to FHWA. The following maps are just maps of the recommendations that are included in the table that was on the previous slide. Again, just showing what the current status of the roadway project is and what is being recommended that we submit to FHWA, to NCDOT and then FHWA. And I will be more than happy to answer any questions that anyone might have about this process. We do plan to do another open call for roadway modifications in November following the adoption of our CTP and our MTP. Of course, the MTP adopted today, later today, hopefully.
Hey, Byron, it's Mark Kirshner. Question about the matrix. Is that provided to you by FHWA, or is that something that the MPO came up with?
Within the matrix, there are recommendations from FHWA as far as what numbers or thresholds that we should be incorporating. Some of it has been adjusted so that it does match our local environment. When we developed this initially, we worked with NCDOT just to make sure that everything that we incorporated was reasonable.
Okay, other questions for Byron? Thank you, Byron. All right, hearing none, we will go on to the next item, which is the consideration of the fiscal year 2020-2029 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program amendments and modifications for the Winston-Salem urban area MPO. Byron?
As it was stated earlier, we have our list of projects is included in our Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, or MTIP. These projects are also included in the state's Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP. As modifications and amendments are being made to the state's document, we also must make those modifications to our local metropolitan document. Included in this packet are a list of modifications, deletions, and amendments that are being made to the STIP that are now being reflected in our MTIP. Per our public participation policy, we made these amendments available to the general public for at least 30 days between August 15, 2020 and September 16, 2020. Today, we did not receive any comments for these amendments. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Byron. Are there any questions for Byron? All right, hearing none, then we will go to the consideration of letters of support for the Workshop of Davidson and Life Center of Davidson County for NCDOT's Federal Transit Administration Section 5310 funding. And that's Kelly.
Yes. So the item before you is actually a review for letter of support for Davidson County Department of Senior Services, the Workshop of Davidson, and the Life Center of Davidson County of North Carolina, for the North Carolina Department of Transportation's FTA's Section 5310 funding. So NCDOT's Public Transportation Division administers the application and the selection process for the allocation of FTA Section 5310 funds for the rural areas. The Section 5310 program provides funding to improve mobility for seniors and individuals with disability by removing barriers to transportation services and expanding the transportation mobility options. The Workshop of Davidson, Life Center of Davidson County, and Davidson County Department of Senior Services provide services within the metropolitan area and in rural areas in Davidson County for disabled persons and individuals 65 years and older. Only services provided in the urbanized area of the MPO are eligible for funding through our MPO. For areas determined not to be within the MPO's UZA, the providers can apply for funding through the state's 5310 funding program. This letter of support acknowledges the Workshop of Davidson's, the Life Center of Davidson County, and Davidson County Department of Senior Services' desire to participate in the state's competitive selection process for services provided outside the MPO's UZA, and as well as the TAC support for these agencies to apply for this specific funding program. The Workshop of Davidson has requested $130,000. Life Center of Davidson County has requested $48,000, and Davidson County Department of Senior Services has requested $250,000 from the state's 5310 program. If approved by the TAC, this letter of support will be provided to the agencies to include in their application to NCDOTs for 5310 funding opportunities provided by the state. The letters are included in your packet for your review. This item will be up for action at our next meeting.
All right. Thank you, Kelly. Are there any questions for Kelly? All right, hearing none, then we will go into our staff reports. And I'll just go through the list. NCDOT updates, Pat?
Okay, obviously our report is in your package, but just wanted to bring everybody up to date on a couple of projects. B4746, which is the replacement of the bridge on Akron over the railroad. The completion date is May of 2021, but we anticipate that that bridge will actually be open to traffic by the end of this year. On the next page, of course, I think everybody's aware, we did open the first section of the Beltway between Salem Parkway and US 158, that's 2579B. The C section is scheduled, on schedule to open by the end of this year as well. And remaining sections are on schedule. And also U4734, which is the Macy Grove Extension Project in the Kernersville area. We anticipate that we will be able to open that project some 6 to 8 months early by the middle of October as well. So a couple of good news is on there. Any other questions? That is my report, unless there are other questions from the group.
Thank you, Pat. Any questions for Pat? Okay, we'll go on to the Winston-Salem Urban Area MPO Transportation Project update. Kelly?
Nothing beyond what's included in the packet. If anybody has any updates for their projects, please submit them to me so that I can then update our spreadsheet here. That's really all.
All right, any comments, questions on projects for Kelly? Okay, we will go on to the NCDOT Transportation Planning update. Darrell?
Thank you, Tony. The yearly safety performance measures have been transmitted to all the MPOs, just transmitted a few days ago, September 11th. MPOs have 180 days, just as a reminder, to support the state or come up with their own targets for those yearly targets. We are, I should say, so the MPO has until, what did I say, February 27th of next year to support and come up with their own targets. So that should be coming up at a meeting. And we are currently it's a 4-year cycle for performance measures. We are at the halfway point, and the data has shown that we do not need to adjust the 4-year targets. We do have, DOT states have that option, but that was not needed. We are on track to attain our established targets, so there was no need to adjust those. That concludes my update.
All right, thank you, Darrell. Are there any questions for Darrell? All right. We've got the Piedmont Triad Regional Council of Governors update. Lynn, but I don't think Lynn was on this call. Forsyth County OEAP Air Quality update. Carrie, was someone from OEAP on the call? Nope. Okay. Bicycle and pedestrian facilities projects update, Matthew?
Deacon, I don't have anything to add, but I can answer any questions if anybody has any.
All right, any questions for Matthew? All right, the Winston-Salem Transit Authority update, Donna?
Yes, everything is still the same. The only update that I have to my report that's in the book is effective Sunday, September the 20th, Worcester will return to our regular schedule. So we're on our level 1 service, which is Saturday schedule, Monday through Saturday, and Sunday service on Sunday. Effective this Sunday, we will return back to our weekday service, Monday through Saturday, and Sunday service. So that is the only additional information I wanted to offer with this update.
Okay. Any questions for Donna? All right, thank you, Donna. Piedmont Authority for Regional Transportation. It's not Scott, it's actually Mark.
Yes, thank you, Tanique. Yeah, I'd be glad to answer any questions that anyone might have through our what's happening. After the what's happening, though, I did want to draw attention to our return to normal analysis. So we are trying to keep an eye on a couple of things about returning to normal as it relates to our transportation patterns here within the region, as well as the traffic volume. Public transportation, the ridership is continuing to inch up, and I think with Donna's announcement that they're returning to their full service is further indication that people are starting to return to transit, but also their commute patterns. There's also a graph in there that is assembled by the NCDOT about traffic volumes, and our region is pulling back up to their baseline from when they started an analysis back in March. So again, I think that's a fairly strong indicator too that from a traffic standpoint, things are getting back to normal. I'm not saying that they're there, but they're certainly getting that way. So just wanted to point those items out.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any questions for Mark? Okay, Davidson County Transportation. I thought I saw that Richard was on the line, but I think he may have disappeared. I hadn't heard him.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you now, Richard.
Yep, I'm here. I have nothing to add, but I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Richard? Okay. Title VI compliance update, Marlene Davis. And before Marlene speaks, Marlene is our new Title VI coordinator for the MPO. And she will be providing some training and other information in the future on Title VI. So Marlene?
Tanique, there's nothing to report at this moment or at this time.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Marlene? Okay. We will go on to MPO calendar of activities. Byron?
Nothing to add.
Any questions for Byron? All right, ethics liaison, Kirk.
Thank you, Tanique. I'll just remind everyone, as I mentioned at the previous meeting, all of your officials appointed to the TAC have met their 2020 ethics requirements. So kudos to everyone's efforts in making that happen earlier than in previous years. So that's it for me, Tanique.
Thank you, Kirk. All right, the last thing is our next meeting, which is scheduled for November, and the adjournment. And I know that I've had some questions from others asking, how long will we continue to have these virtual meetings? And the only thing I can share is that we have been following and being consistent with the City of Winston-Salem's City Council. And so as long as City Council continues to have virtual meetings in accordance with the governor's orders of limiting our stay-at-home orders, then we will continue to have our virtual meetings. So we will keep you all informed if anything changes. And then one last thing I will update is that the DOT staff is moving into Union Station. We should be moved in by the end of this month, or at least by October 2nd. And as soon as we can invite you all over to come and tour our facilities, we will let you know. But right now, city buildings are not open to the public. And so until we reopen to the public, we'll just keep you updated so that you'll know where we are. So if no one has any other item for the group, then I will recommend adjournment.
Thank you, Tanique.
Thank you. Thank you all, everybody. Stay safe. And we will, for those of you that will join us, we'll see you at the TAC meeting.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You there, Byron? Hello?
Yeah, you can give me a call. This is still recording on channel 10.
Yeah, thanks.